Good morning, and thank you for joining Resilient You with Alicia Pozsony. Each week, we have special guests on our show who talk about topics of resilience. And today, we have Meredith O'Brien. Meredith, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Meredith, I want to share with our listeners, you are a licensed clinical social worker. You're also specialized and a certified intuitive eating counselor, and you run a mental health center in Red Bank, New Jersey. Is that right?
That is right, yes. I opened my mental health practice in 2012, and it consists of me and 5 other licensed clinicians where we're able to help other people.
Wonderful. Now, since the COVID pandemic, are you back in person seeing patients?
Yeah, great question. So we actually have both services, both telehealth are available as well as in-person sessions. So it really depends on the nature of the client, and we try to be as flexible as possible.
Wonderful. Now, do you have individual sessions primarily, or do you have any groups?
That's a great question. So primarily we do individual therapy, but we also offer group therapy services. I personally run an adult eating disorder support group every week, which is a wonderful group I run. And we also run 4 different dialectical behavior therapy skills groups, which is DBT for short. And we run those for adolescents, teenagers, young adults, and adults.
How wonderful. So that I know that is a very effective treatment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I myself, I've done behavioral assistance working with another choice counseling out of the Cherry Hill, New Jersey area, working with youth primarily. But I know that, a lot of our listeners who have gone through, had different trauma, different things, you know, it's scary when you have something that is traumatic. And oftentimes the feelings associated, the emotions that go along with it, and this is why I'm so happy to have you on talking about the topic we're going to talk about today. Meredith has a brand new book out, and it is very special. Meredith is the author of a book called Opening the Door, My Journey Through Anorexia to Full Recovery.
Yes.
And I know I've had a couple other guests on the show where we talked about body dysmorphia, different conditions where, it always stays with you. It's not something that, is one and done, or you can just, it's not external. So it's not something that you can just avoid, right? Such as alcoholism or, some other, it's so your book was published on July 26th.
It's right here. I'm so proud of it. Yes.
By Kohler Books. And so, so Meredith, one of the things I read, and I want to hear your story. And again, we don't want to give it all away because I imagine it's all in the book, right? We want everyone. So let's just start off. How can people find your book?
Sure. So my book is offered on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and really anywhere books are sold. So you can go order online or go to a bookstore.
Okay, and who do you say are the primary readers of your book? Who should read it?
Yeah, so great question. So I believe that it is a book for people who are impacted by an eating disorder, someone who has an active eating disorder and or is in recovery. I also believe the book is for people with loved ones with an eating disorder, so they can really understand, what living with an eating disorder looks like, as well as I think it's very important for healthcare professionals, especially those working with eating disorders and other people who don't work with eating disorders, to understand the illness a little bit better.
So when you say eating disorder, how do we understand what that looks like? I know that today, there's a lot of information available online. I have a teenager who has recently become more aware and is comparing himself with other teenagers, right? So it's an
Yes.
age thing. They all do it.
Yes.
Um, and I've always been one to talk about health and being healthy, making good choices with food, and balancing what you do and what you eat, right? That's been a phrase we've used in our house. Um, but I think in my household, I've got a 9-year-old. She loves sweets, and she would easily choose something unhealthy. But then she has her moments where she'll prefer a salad over something else. And again, balance is something that I stress in my house. So it's like, if you avoid everything, that's not healthy either, right? Because then when you want something, you're going to overdo it. But when you have an eating disorder, right, it's like a distorted way of looking at your body or your eating. How would you describe this?
So I think there are a few different eating disorders, but I think at the core of most of them, it is this disordered view of our body image and how we see ourselves. There's also this intense fear of weight gain. And usually there are some behaviors that people have, including restriction, uh, binging and or purging, and other behaviors such as body checking and weighing themselves obsessively. And so it's really having this incredibly unhealthy relationship with body, food, and weight. And it turns into an obsession, and it's very difficult that instead of attuning to our internal state, we focus on the external rules that our eating disorder starts to create for us. And then we listen to them externally without attuning to our inner selves. And so we really lose our authentic self. And part of recovery, for me, I know I'm jumping, is to be able to create an identity away from the eating disorder.
Hmm. Okay, so that's a lot that you just said right there. So if we have a distorted view and a fear of weight gain, and we have associated behaviors with that, such as binging, purging, restriction, or body checking, then it might be something to think about getting help for. And
Absolutely.
again, it's what I want everyone to know, because it's been a few people that I've encountered lately have admitted that later on in life is when they realized that they had this distorted view. um and again, the sources, I mean, I imagine, are very broad, right? It could have stemmed from an experience that you've had or how you were treated. um
Yes. I mean,
so
there's so many factors in terms of, having an eating disorder or getting an eating disorder. And I think that there's also, in the media, I think that eating disorders are portrayed in sort of a stereotypical way. And so I think for a lot of people, they feel like they need to be severely underweight to have an eating disorder. And I often call it, sick enough to get help. And that is a myth. You can be in any body size and have an eating disorder, and you deserve help. And I think that that's, unfortunately, people feel like they don't deserve it if they don't fit the stereotypical person who has an eating disorder. And I think in the field and in our society, we're changing that to be able to say you can be in any body size and suffer, and you deserve help.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I've known people who were overweight, and with their physical makeup, they went the route of the lap band surgery or other surgeries to lose weight. And you know then I've had other people who I've known that really turned to something healthy, but then that became an obsession, exercising or eating
Yes.
barely anything. I mean, there's so many ways that this can go off track, and getting help is something that I think a lot of people. I really love what you just said about you can be any body size and you can still need help. And it's, again, there shouldn't be shame in getting help or asking for help, because we're all suffering the human condition, I call
Yes.
it. We're
Mhm.
all human. No one of us is perfect. And so, it's especially for like our teenagers and our even our younger tweens. My daughter is 9, and she loves to eat, and we all do, and we moved to a new neighborhood, and this neighborhood people are, I'll say it, they're healthier here. They're more active. Um, they are always walking, running, biking. It's a wonderful place to live. I feel so blessed now to be in a better area than where we were in a city where it was not as I don't know, people were not as health minded.
Mhm.
So in looking at my own daughter's situation, I always talk about my family because it's close to me. You know, it's funny because other kids I've seen too, like there was a person that I was working with, and she was bigger than other people her age, and she did love to eat, and she was always snacking. And so, you know, my experience was that at her age, they were calling her strong, and they were calling her, you know, mainly strong was like the general way they were viewing her. But I wondered, what was that doing to her to differentiate her in that way? I mean, was it reinforcing the fact that being bigger was better? And what would that do to her later in life? I mean, I don't know. I guess each of us are different, and we handle things different.
Sure.
Um,
I
my
think
my
go ahead.
mom
Mhm.
my mom would kind of guilt me. She would try to guilt me into, "Oh, you're getting a little weight, aren't you?"
Yes.
And it didn't bother me because I've always been confident in who I
Mhm.
am,
Yeah.
fortunate enough. But someone else, it may, right.
Really set
And
them off. Yes. And I'm actually having a lot of clients come to me after going to like a primary care doctor and being told that they need to lose weight. And I think that unfortunately in our society, we have this unattainable beauty ideal that we live in a diet mentality. And I think that we unfortunately have reinforced that smaller is better. And that's BS. I mean, all bodies are beautiful and good. And it's sort of ridiculous when I think about it how we focus so much on body weight and shape, right? So if that little girl is in a bigger body, she's in a bigger body. There's no point in pointing that out because what matters in a person is their self, their soul, their authentic self. And so I think that, I often talk to my clients about like flowers and dogs. We never look at a flower and be like, oh, Rose, you should really look like a lily, or we don't look at a dog and say, oh, Golden Doodle, you really should be like a Labrador. No, because we celebrate diversity. And that's what
mm,
I think we need to get back to, that all bodies are good bodies. And all bodies and all sizes count, and we all have a different genetic makeup. But I think what happens is people start to betray their soul to try to fit into this really unattainable beauty ideal. And then what happens that, society tells them that they're not good enough. And I was one of those people. And then they try to lose weight. And then for some of them, it becomes a deadly illness. And it
mm,
is really serious. I mean, mental eating disorders has the second highest mortality rate of any mental illness, only second to opioid addiction.
mm,
And every 52 minutes, someone dies. And so, the diet mentalities around us is literally killing people.
mm,
And I think that, as you mentioned, going back to your family, and picking good choices, I think really what it is about recognizing that food is not a moral issue. Food is not, if you have an apple, that doesn't mean you're good. And if you have a chocolate bar, that means you're bad. It's all foods fit, and to try and create a healthy relationship. And so, one of the things that people often do, especially at a young age, is say, oh, no, don't have that, or nope, don't have that. And then what happens is there's this sense of deprivation, and an obsession can start, right? And then what happens when we feel like we're not able to have something, then we can, have an extreme behavior when we do have the food. And so I'm a true believer in all foods fit, and to be able to connect, attune to our inner self, because we're all born with our authentic self. And then we live through this world, right? And we get these messages, and our narratives just become bigger and bigger and bigger, and it really, really impacts our relationship with our body weight and shape.
Mm. So I want to hear about what happened to you,
Sure.
but I first want to ask a question. So you said that the obsession can start, I guess at any time, right? So
Yes, anytime.
if a person is comparing themselves with others, or maybe they're talked to, kids are bullied, or they do it for fun, the boys or girls, in school at a young age,
Mhm.
and you know if if a person sees a change in their loved one in their eating habits, for example, and they see it once, oh, they're skipping meals,
Mhm.
or oh, they're eating 2-3 bites of this food and making excuses if their behaviors are changing, and then maybe later, a few days later, they eat a slice of pizza or they have a dessert or something, then you feel reassured, like, oh, they don't have a problem, they're okay. But how do we know how to support someone in that when we see something? Maybe they're working out like more than they should, right? 30
Sure.
minutes a day, 1 hour a day. Maybe they're, you know, just drinking milk and water and they're not eating. Like, how do we know when to go for help? And how can we do it in such a way that is not off-putting to them?
Sure. I mean, I think what's important is to validate, right, whatever they're going through. So I think, trying to be there in that person's experience and show concern. You might say, I just noticed the other day and I just wanted to check in with you and say that I'm here for you and I love you, and I would, I'm definitely here to support you if you need help. Because I think that, again, that's another myth of eating disorders. Like, we see someone say, oh, they had pizza, okay, they're fine. That doesn't mean anything. It's
Mm-mm.
about the relationship, and it's the mind. It's what's going on when that person is eating that pizza. What is going on when that person is saying they have to, work out a certain amount of time. So it's the relationship which is the issue. And so I
Mm.
would just go up to a loved one and say, I'm concerned, we're here for you, and I have some resources for you if necessary.
Okay,
Yeah. I
wonderful.
mean, I
Yeah,
think
so
that usually, we can ask to say, okay, well, how would you describe your relationship with food? And even just asking people that question is just like so many things come out, you know? And that's one of the first questions I usually ask as an intake, as well as what is your relationship with your body weight and shape?
mm,
Because so much can come out. So it's
wonderful.
you've heard this before. It's not about the food. It is about the food. It's a combination. That yes, if you have an eating disorder, eating the food and having exposure therapy is a pivotal part of recovery, but also it is about recognizing what need is the eating disorder fulfilling. Right. So for
Hmm.
some, it might be comfort. It might be a distraction. It might be control. It might be that they feel special or unique. It might be that's a way that they avoid their feelings. So it's really about understanding really what's underneath that.
Wow. Do you hear this, everyone? Meredith O'Brien accepting patients now.
Yes,
um,
I am. Yes, I am. Hmm.
that just resonated with me, that because I know myself through my education and training that behaviors are basically from a need that's not being met.
Absolutely. So no one
And
wakes up and says, "I think I'll have an eating disorder." No one does. And however, though, when you unfortunately have one, right, it's your responsibility to be able to get the help and get better. But it always serves a need. If it didn't serve a need, we wouldn't need support, right? And so
yeah,
it's
yeah.
really figuring that out, and it's about figuring that out and then saying, how am I able to get that need met in healthy ways? And then also, I'm a big, like I always say, let's put our detective hat on and say, is the eating disorder actually serving the need you think it is?
Mm,
Right? Because
yeah.
sometimes we're like, oh, it gives me a sense of control. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about where's the evidence that it gives you a sense of control, you know? And then after
Mm,
we get through the conversation, they're like, actually, it has control over me, it's like this illusion. And so we really want to be able to say, okay, is the evidence for or against it, as well as what are the benefits you get versus the cost you pay? And for people with eating disorders, from me working with them for many, many years and me going through my own journey, an eating disorder steals your entire life. It really, your brain becomes, I often say, like 95% like taken over by the eating disorders. You have this very, very small part of you that's not impacted. And so every
mm.
decision, every second of every day is connected to the eating disorder, which makes your world very, very, very small and very isolated.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So your book, Opening the Door: My Journey Through Anorexia to Full Recovery. Let's talk about that, Meredith.
Yes, I'm so excited. It was released July 26th. And, I always loved writing. I loved writing in high school and college. And, I started to write a blog a few years ago, and I was like, okay, I really like this writing thing. And I knew I had a story to tell because, no one or majority of people in my life did not know I was struggling because I hid really against, I had a job and I smiled all the time. And, I did what, everyone's like, oh, she has it all together. But like behind the scenes, I was literally falling apart. And I think I first started the book as more of like a how to for therapists, so like how to help those with eating disorders. But my heart wasn't in it. I just was like, you know what? That's not a book for now. And one day I woke up and I thought I have to do a memoir, and it has to be a personal journey because that's where I feel so connected. And I started going to a writing class where I live, and I started going to the memoir class. And I think I did like a memoir 1, 2, and 3. And I started just writing small vignettes, and that's where like the passion was really born to be like, I can do this and I can share my journey. In a few ways, I wanted to write this book was first to show people inspiration and hope, that you can be fully recovered, which means that I'm a woman without an eating disorder right now. So it's not like every day I
Mm,
wake up and say, oh, I have to, think about that and that. I have a more balanced relationship with my body weight and shape and food than I've ever had in my entire life. And so I want to be able to share with people that it does exist. However, it takes tremendous patience and time and dedication and perseverance and a support team to be able to get through it.
mm. So you really, it sounds like you've dedicated your life and your experiences, and now you're giving back. So you're a certified intuitive eating counselor,
Mhm.
and and that's just, it's so amazing to hear your story and hear you tell it. And now it's actually out there in the world, it's published. And
It
so
is, it is. It's so exciting. Um,
and the structure, and again, I got a preview of it. I will buy it. I haven't yet, but I will.
Absolutely. Thank you.
um but I love the structure of it. It's not your typical, start to finish story like I've read other memoirs
Yeah.
that sometimes can drone on.
Mhm.
um it's I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. I just sort of decided, like how was I going to set this book up? And it just kind of flowed organically. And I thought that was, a really good way to go. And interesting enough, I wrote the book, and I was going to end with me in my relapse, my last relapse, about like saying this is I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to fight. And then I got some feedback from people to say, you know what, write about your life in full recovery as well. And so that's what I added a fifth part to my book, to be able to show my life in full recovery. And so I, break it up into sort of like history and then me going to formal treatment, being able to be in the life of recovery for many, many, many years. Unfortunately, a relapse, and then my life in full recovery. And so that's kind of how I break up the book.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was reading,
Mm-hmm.
there was a section that was, really interesting to me in terms of like resilience and, um, I was so curious. The page 86 of the book is that chapter is called Rage.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell readers a little bit about that?
Sure, sure. So I was seeing a therapist at the time, and during our session, I know the therapist made a comment about what an easy client I am and how I just know what to do and I do it. And there was something that clicked inside me that brought about this intense emotion. And I wasn't really sure what it is, but I felt it in my body. And of course, I pushed it down because that's what I do with my, or did with my emotions. I would just push them down. And then I was able to really step back and say, what am I feeling? So this therapist is telling me I'm easy client, I'm doing everything right. And I was like, you know what? This is, again, this role that people expect from me, that I'm a people pleaser, that I do what people tell me, that I am not complicated. And you know what? I am. And I'm beautiful and I am resilient and I am strong. And I left that session and I understood that I had so much rage. I was full of rage to say, you know what? I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to tell people about my story and I'm going to get the help I need. And this particular therapist, and nothing against her, it's just that, it wasn't the relationship I needed at that time. And that's
Mm.
actually right before I went into my partial hospitalization program as an adult at age 35.
Wow. So you went through, and listeners, I want you to be aware that she mentioned that she was getting therapy. She realized it wasn't the correct fit, for lack of a better word, but it wasn't the right fit. And it didn't stop her. She didn't give up there. A lot of people would give up. Okay, try that. It didn't work. I'm done. So
Mhm.
I want to bring that up because that's very crucial. Like here she is, and you're pushing down the emotions, which we all do it because it doesn't feel good, right? We want to feel good. We don't want to feel those feelings, which are difficult at best. So you at age 35, you went into the hospital after holding down your job and smiling through your days and hiding everything and stuffing your emotions. And so, wow, how did you what led you to that?
I mean, so many things led me to that. I think that what was most important, I talk about it in the book, that my main hope and motivation was that I wanted to be the best aunt I could be to my nephews. So I have four beautiful nephews. When I went into recovery at age 35, I had two nephews. Now I have four. Um, I knew I wanted to be able to create a relationship with them, um, and be there for them and support them and love them and connect with them. And I knew that my eating disorder, in other words, had like a component. I mean, an opponent. It was to say, listen, like your life can be so small, and being completely wrapped up in the eating disorder, whereas I push the emotions down, you also push the good emotions down too. Like for me, I dealt with disassociation and disconnection. And so I often felt like my life was going by me, but I was like watching it from an observer. I wasn't in my life, I was watching it. And I knew I couldn't have that type of connection with my nephews. And they were the first, like the major motivation for me going into treatment.
So that's really 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 good. I mean, people sometimes are more introverted, others are extroverted. Some people have these like superficial relationships with others, and I'm a deep soul. So if you
Mhm.
connect with me, we're going to connect and we're going to be great friends for a long time. I have a couple handfuls of those.
Yes.
But but the truth is that, if you're a person who is, viewing viewing your life and just on the outskirts, if you're making excuses, and this could be due to an eating disorder, it could be due to some other addictions as well,
Sure.
or self-interpretation. I mean, again, I that's like an interesting topic, actually,
Yes.
in and of itself. So you wanted to have a more real relationship with your nephews and be able to be
Yes.
there for them. Meredith, tell me, what are some of the things that you would do while you were, in under that eating disorder lifestyle? What are the things that would keep you distant from everything?
Sure. I mean, so I had such fear of judgment, um, that I truly believed when I walked out the door, people were judging me. They were talking about my body weight and shape. And I was so scared of that perceived judgment. There were many times I wouldn't even leave the house. So I would lock my door, I would put down the shades, and I would literally hide in my bedroom. And I wasn't able to leave the house. I mean, the few times I left the house was to go to therapy, and to go to the gym and to go get Starbucks coffee. That was my three outings, because
Mm.
I was so self-conscious about this judgment that I didn't want people to see me. And so, ironically, you think that, oh, okay, I'm going to change the shape of my body and I'm going to have, I write this in the book, I'm going to have this booming social life and I'm going to be out and about, where I stayed home in big sweats, sequestered and alone and miserable and depressed. So I would cancel, I would not answer the phone, I wouldn't connect with people, I wouldn't go out with my friends anymore. There are many years that my friends didn't see me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow,
it's really
that
that
is.
disconnection from other people. And, I often say I was like a robot, just like walking around listening to my eating disorder. And I wasn't able to connect to my authentic self. And so that's why I was like, my part of recovery was being able to connect back to that. But also, it's not about where I was before the eating disorder. It's to identify who I want to be, right? I don't have to be all these roles that people tell me I'm supposed to be. And we all fall into roles, right? So it's like, oh, I'm the straight A student. Okay, that's a role. I have to be that my whole life. Okay, I'm the role. I'm the people pleaser. I avoid conflict. Okay, that's my role. And then I was like, wait a second, do I want that to be my role? And I realized
Mm.
no. And for me, it was really, identifying and using my voice and being able to make my own decisions, without thinking or needing to please other people. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you lived a life of fear of judgment,
Yes.
and it was so severe that you were hiding inside of
Yes.
your house. I
Mm-hmm.
I just can't. I mean, I had depression in my early 20s,
Sure.
and my friends would, come on, Alicia, let's go. We're gonna go camping. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna go out. And I remember my husband now. He would say to me, you know, what? Come on, let's go. You like these people. Why don't he couldn't understand when I was in depression, and it wasn't an eating disorder, although I did have an issue when I was younger. Now that we're talking about this,
Yes.
um, when I was in my 20s, my mother was married to a man, my stepfather,
Okay.
and I found out that my mother was cheating on my stepfather,
Okay.
and I suddenly became like unable to eat. Like I had a feeling in my throat that I couldn't swallow, or it wasn't safe. I couldn't. It was a strange thing. So I talked about it to my friends, and I went to counseling, and they said, "Oh, well, eating and anything with the mouth is associated with the mother usually." This is what the therapist told me. So I said, okay, now I have this knowledge. I'm a smart person. I can do this. So I'm going to eat a banana. It's soft. I'm going to eat 2 bites of a banana. Well, I couldn't do it. It was freaky. It was so strange.
Wow.
I told my stepfather, I confronted him and I said, I have something to tell you. And, and it broke his heart. And then he was a detective. So he followed my mother and sure enough, found out she was seeing another man. And so you think then I'd be okay because this situation came to a full head. It was resolved. It was outside of me. Well, no. For probably 2 years, and I was like emaciated. You could see it in my face. I was thin. I was eating Cheetos, the puff kind. I was eating those. I had a job, but it was, I knew it wasn't normal, So, and then there was a flood. Then there was like hurricanes, and the town next to me got flooded, and our condo was okay, but it was still. Then my stepfather died. This was a horrible thing, which he was killed suddenly on a motorcycle, and anyway, I have my memoir, which I'm gonna put out one of these days. But so then I was able to eat turkey subs from Quick Check, the convenience store.
Okay.
But it was a weird process, and eventually I went on Prozac for 1 year.
Okay.
And I was in therapy as well. Never, I don't know, it was never talked about as an eating disorder, but I guess it was.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing as you talk about, like, like you couldn't physically eat, like I think about secrets. I think about not using our voice, and so yes, as your therapist said, that's connected to the mother possibly, but also I'm hearing that you had this information and it was really traumatic on how to manage and deal with that. And so I think that you were eventually able to share this with your stepdad, and so you used your voice, but still there were just so many emotions around that it sounded like that's there. Not eating or eating very specific foods kind of served a need in that very, a lot of things were out of control, a lot of transition, a lot of change, and that's really overwhelming and scary. And so it seemed like only eating certain foods helped you in that moment. It was protective. And that's what I also tell my clients, I don't say, we have to get rid of the eating disorder, it's bad. No. Our eating disorder is protective. It starts as a self-defense to be able to help us through really difficult situations. And so then it's about stepping back and saying, I thank you, eating disorder. You helped me when I really needed you. And I don't need you anymore because you're also hurting me. And so how am I able to find a different, healthier way to be able to meet that need?
It's true. It's true. Because when it lifted, I feel like the medication was helping me to become less, I don't know what the word is. Like I was less depressed.
Yes.
I was more calm and just able to be without anything holding me back.
Absolutely.
And, so it's,
I'm very,
yeah, that's interesting how you said that it's protective. And so eating those foods was a controlling thing that I was able to control. And yeah, I was not able to. And, I guess with my morals and my values, I was raised that you don't cheat on your spouse. And the fact that, my mother did that, and I knew she didn't feel loved, and he was away a lot of the time, and they had differences in their relationship. And again, my mom was mentally ill though, but that was another component of it. But she, but it's interesting because that's, Yeah.
It's what I'm hearing is that you had such a dissonance inside you. Like, you love your mother, you love your stepdad, you have this information, and then it's like, I don't know how old you were, but to have that information and be like, oh wait, this doesn't feel good in my body, but I don't know what to do. and eventually making that decision, but also this possibly the sense of betrayal on your mom. I mean, there's so many things underneath that made sense that, your relationship with food, protected you in that time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Oh, thank you. I'm glad to talk with you
No,
today. This
sure.
was
Anytime.
I'm learning. But
Yes.
I want our listeners to know that every person, we have our own journey, and just because we handle it a certain way or we're doing our best, you're not alone out there. There's people like myself, like I'm a professional, and I have a husband and kids, and we have our pets and our house, and we're it's. I went through stuff, and I'm so happy to have this opportunity to have this radio show to talk about it. Um, and kind of normalize some of these things that people might feel shame over.
Sure.
um
I mean, so many people, or so many of my clients who come, they share all these things, and I'm like, you're not alone. Like, and they're like, oh my gosh, it feels so good to talk about it. Like, I have kept it inside. I thought, that I wasn't sick enough, or there was something wrong with me. And it's so like important for them to have a safe place, a protective place to be able to talk and get, resources and support, especially in the groups I run. It's so beautiful when someone brings something up and people are like, I went through that too, and this is what helped me, or, I'm here for you. And it's like to recognize, we think in the moment it's only us, like we're the only one suffering, but that's not true. And so part of the courage is to ask for help and be able to then, get some support to be able to slowly, when you're ready, to share your story. Mm-hmm.
yeah, you said use your voice. I have a bumper sticker on my car right now that says use your voice. No kidding.
Love that.
What
Wow. That's like, I could have used that as my book name too. Like, I just shut down as a teenager, and I just did what I was told and didn't express my opinions. And, I think part of me was being able to find my voice and be able to make my own decisions. Even if someone doesn't agree with it, even if someone is going to disagree with it, or not support me, to be able to recognize is that I'm my own person. And, the eating disorder just served so many, functions for me, especially for me just to avoid my feelings. From a very young age, I disassociated, and that was the way I protected myself. So whenever I had any type of feeling that felt unpleasant, I would just detach and disconnect completely and not feel it. And I really felt like I was living my life like a robot, and then I was able to say, wait a second, like there was always these glimmers, like you deserve more, like you are a good person underneath there, we know that, but I think that it just takes so long to be able to fully accept yourself. And really ultimately the journey helped me to find my voice and to be able to really go through full circle, like after I reached full recovery, and then I started to specialize in helping those with eating disorders. And so each day, that's the full circle. It's like I went through this and I'm giving back and I'm helping people go through their journey. And one thing I'd like to share about with eating disorders is that it takes tremendous patience, because recovery is usually a long haul. It's not something that happens overnight. I mean, people can be in recovery for 5, 10, 15 years, because you're really unlearning so many of the things that you have learned that have protected you. And it takes a really long time. And so a lot of people are like, it's just too hard, which I appreciate. I have wanted to give up many times in my recovery. But I just knew that there was something out there, and I knew I could use some of the traits that I had that kind of got me an eating disorder, like this very perfectionism and perseverance, and I always want to be the best. And I was like, wait a second, that's not helping me, right? Perfection doesn't exist, but let me use some of that motivation and perseverance and dedication and throw myself into recovery, and that was really helpful.
Mm-hmm. So so your perception, and it requires a change of thinking.
Yes,
And
absolutely a change of thinking.
I imagine, of course it takes bravery and courage, and you have to go in small steps, go in,
Yes.
in my book, I have it here, and I'll talk about it because I always do on my shows. Emotional
Absolutely.
Strength Explained. It's a
Yeah.
self-help workbook, and you know, we go through, why did you buy this book, right? Or why did you
Mhm.
pick up the book? Or why did your counselor suggest you should use this book? Um,
Yes.
you identify that, and then you let it sit, and the next day you come back, and then you face it. The third thing is reject criticism and judgment. And so, you know, this book, I wrote the book in just like 4 months. When someone read my memoir, they said, wow, how did you come out so good? If that was me, I would not have turned out so well.
Mhm.
And I just kind of started writing because I too love to write,
Yeah.
and I did the same thing. It started as a how-to book, but
Mhm.
then I realized I want it not to be something that you read and digest and think about, and maybe it'll be helpful. I did it as, and it's really kind of simple, but it goes through these things. So if you're ready, it's a really great tool. If you're first experiencing what your feelings are, if you kind of have an idea of what's going on, you just don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
There's prompts, and it really does. It really helps. It really does. So even if it's not going to solve it, it'll help you. It's a tool to help you get more in tune with yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a big believer in prompts. I give my clients, an assignment every week because it really is recovery is an action. It's a verb. It's and you are continuing to take action to try to connect with your inner self and be able to find a real joy and passion away from your body weight and shape. And I think
Mm.
that you know I can't wait to buy your book and to help that with clients. I mean, that's going to be
Mm.
wonderful. Yeah.
Thank
So,
you. Well, it's hard. Like here in New Jersey, we have the four seasons. We have, right now we're in summer.
mhm.
Um, Yesterday I was out and I saw different families, and I'm going to be turning 50, so I'm having this aging thing going on.
Right?
Um, but I'm looking, and I'm comparing myself with others. And when I looked and I saw other women my age, same thing. I went somewhere else recently, and they had to have clear bags to get in. They couldn't have a regular bag, so they had clear bags. Well, like I saw four women with inhalers, and I have asthma too. So I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one with the asthma. But the point I'm trying to make is that we do compare ourselves,
Mhm.
whether it was taught to do it, or whether it's something internal. We do that. I think we do that to try to fit in or normalize, or make ourselves feel equal to others.
Mhm.
And I know that if you're a parent out there, your kids are doing it at different ages. um, they don't realize differences, right, between girls and boys and all that stuff until a little bit later in life, but then they will, and they realize, you know so my son, who is being mindful of his body, I'm telling him what to do. um okay, yeah, it's great you're drinking water, but you also need vitamins and nutrients. You can't just drink a gallon of water and think you're good. You need to. So and with that, he needs to be feeling good enough to accept that offer. Like if he's shut down because he thinks I'm coming down on him or judging him,
Yes.
that's not going to work. So it is true. Like if you're a parent out there, have the conversations. Meredith has some great advice for us. Validate what they might be going through, how they might be feeling. Tell them you notice and check in on their behavior. um, it's so important to be in the moment in other people's lives that we're with, whether it's your friend or your family, whether it's someone that you see. I mean, there was a woman that was outside the Starbucks, and her head was kind of to the side, and as I passed in my car, I said, wait a minute, is she okay? And I
Yeah.
stopped and I went back. And
Sure.
you know and then someone was helping her at that moment, so I said, okay, she's all right, and then I kept going. But that's just one example that the world is so big, and it's up to us to make it what we want it to be. And if we can, help each other by saying thank you, or by just, smiling at someone, for example, it might give them that little glimmer of hope and goodness that they need to take that forward. um,
Absolutely.
Resilience is something that you build, and it's something
Yes.
that is, it's something you can learn. I think some people have more of it naturally, but
Mhm.
for those of us who need a little bit more, it's something that is, as in Meredith's book, is showing you. She went through something that was so devastating, 20 years of living like that. I don't know if anyone can imagine that. Maybe you yourself have some level of that. um, if a lot of men out there too, I remember growing up when it was told to me that boys can lose weight. Like, I had friends in classes that were in wrestling, and they would drop weight like that, and I would be like, I when I hit 14, I gained weight. It was
Sure, we
puberty.
all do. We all. It's very common to gain over 30 pounds in puberty. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And so I gained the weight, and I wore like a jean jacket, and I covered it up, and it was, then I started riding a bike, and that helped. Um and again, I had my desk drawer full of candy bars, and I would eat a candy bar, and my mom would be like, she wouldn't know about it, like, so
Mhm.
I guess, you know balance is what I think is important, right? Balance in your thinking and your interpretation of your image of yourself, and just know that there is hope out there. Meredith's story
Absolutely.
is one that is so great that it's out there, opening the door, my journey through anorexia to full recovery. Now,
Yes.
Meredith, full recovery, that just amazes me.
I know. It amazes me sometimes. I have to pinch myself. So, I really didn't know, when I was 13 and diagnosed with anorexia, I, first of all, was very confused. I didn't really know what was going on. I really didn't know what it meant. And there was a part of me who was like, oh, I guess this is just part of who I am. And then as I went through years of recovery and I met a lot of tremendous mentors, specifically Carolyn Costin, who is a very well known therapist, who gave me the permission to say there full recovery exists. And I was like, oh, I want that then. Like, that's what I want, because I think so much of my life was sort of, it's just, I call it in the book, like quasi recovery, right? I wasn't engaging in behaviors per se, but I was, obsessed with the diet mentality and or having all the thoughts around body weight and shape. And so for me, full recovery was being able to stop the behaviors, but also truly create a different narrative in my head. And then the eating disorder thoughts went away as well. And, in the book, I do talk a little bit about what I believe is full recovery. Now, everyone's going to have a different definition, and that's the beautiful thing. You can create your own definition of what, full recovery means to you. But for me, it was to radically accept my here and now body, which is going to change every day,
Hmm.
and treat it with love and care and compassion and respect, right? Which is really what is the opposite with an eating disorder. And that was really, really important for me to accept my body, and to know it's going to change. And I'm not, my worth has nothing to do with my body size. I mean, that's what we hear from, society, but it's not true. I think also for me, I was able to experience more full recovery to me is experiencing freedom. And how I do that is that I connect to other people, the opposite of what I did when I had my eating disorder. Feeling my feelings was huge because I spent most of my life not feeling them. And so for me, it was experiencing, feeling them, identifying them, sharing them, expressing them when necessary, and being able to, not judge them in any way. To say, okay, what I feel is okay. What I feel is valid. No one has to agree with me, or no one has to, like what I'm feeling. This is about me and what I'm experiencing. And also, it was living in the present moment because part of my journey includes mindfulness and meditation, and being in the present moment, because with an eating disorder, you're usually in the past or the future constantly. It's like I said, I was like a pinball machine, like constantly going back and forth, because the eating disorder doesn't like the present. We just want to get it over with. And so practicing mindfulness was really, really important part of my journey, as well as eating regularly, eating every 3 to 4 hours. I mean, I have an incredible relationship with food. And part of that is taking care of myself and eating regularly and understanding that all foods fit. And my morality has nothing to do with the foods that I eat. Also, I think that finding a purpose that's not related to my body weight or shape. And I have many purposes now. One of the ones I absolutely love is that I am a pet mom. I bought my golden doodle 3 years ago, and for me to fully take care of something and put my golden doodle's needs in front of mine was beautiful. Like, it was just like absolutely beautiful. And I take being her pet parent so serious in the most joyful way, but I able to have the bandwidth in my mind to take care of something. When you have an eating disorder, your life becomes so small. It's like you're living in a tunnel and you're just going through this dark tunnel, and sometimes you see the light, but then you're like, oh, back in the dark. And for me to be able to say, okay, I want to fully take care of my pet, and being able to put her needs in front of mine is just like the pinnacle of me understanding that I'm fully recovered. And I'm able to find joy, absolute joy, every day with being with her.
Oh, how wonderful. So that's also cool. Find purpose not related to your weight, size, or shape.
Absolutely.
So
Or what you
imagine,
eat or what you look like. I mean, it's just that it's so superficial and shallow. And so, I understand why we do it, because the diet mentality is all around us. But to really identify, at the end of the day, we have a body and we have a soul. And so part of recovery for me was just saying, how do I want to build my soul each day? My body is just kind of like, the life suit I wear from day to day. And we all have different bodies. And it's absolutely okay. And we want to celebrate body diversity. There's no right or wrong way to have a body. It's just that our diet culture shows us that or tells us that so they can make a lot of money. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, we have a repeat person coming in and saying, oh, you're not trying hard enough. And then we build a lot of shame and we beat ourselves up. And then we say, oh, okay, I'm going to change my body. You know what? No, let's not do that.
Yeah. So let me ask you,
Yeah.
as I'm hearing you talk about, your body image and, the weight that people put on themselves and the pressure and, I wonder do you feel that anything in your youth, your childhood, or, that your parents or your upbringing could have provided you to offset that eating disorder?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I came from a very loving family. Unfortunately, my dad struggled with binge eating, and so I did see that behavior. And so I think that was sort of internalized. I also, came from a family where, being athletic was extremely important, and I was a dancer. And I think that unfortunately, from a young age, I was congratulated on my body size based on me being a dancer. And I think that was internalized as well. So those are some things in my childhood which definitely stood out in terms of, oh, okay, smaller is better. Okay, so I need to say the size. And I also, from a very young age, jumped onto the diet bandwagon. And, it was sort of like, okay, well, I have 2 brothers and they can do whatever they want, but I have to do something differently. I need to eat different. I need to work out differently. And, unfortunately, I started as a really young age, as well as I believe I have the eating disorder gene. There's a lot of research out there. 10 people can go on a diet and only 1 person will get an eating disorder. So I really think there's so many different factors. And I write in my book that it's like this perfect storm. all these different psychology, biology, sociology, all these factors connect, and the perfect storm is having an eating disorder.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yes.
I had a couple guests on my show who,
Mhm.
had gone through their own journey of physical fitness, and you know, it's interesting because like you mentioned, your dad binge eating. So let me get that straight. So binge eating is what? Eating a lot in a short amount of time,
Yeah,
or
binge eating is when we eat um, a large amount of calories in one sitting, but the main description of a binge eater is feeling out of control, feeling like they cannot stop. So binging
okay.
is not overeating at Thanksgiving or going out to a restaurant and wanting your favorite dessert even though you're full. That is not binge eating. Binge
Yeah.
eating is this feeling of this lack of control.
Mm-mm.
To the point where sometimes people like black out, they don't even remember eating, and that's really what the binge eating is. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you for that definition.
Sure, of course.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
So the perfect storm, and it's interesting because but on this show, we're talking
Hmm.
about resilience. We're talking
Yes.
about, going through something that was perhaps
Sure.
traumatic. Um, I Meredith, I just want to say you are beautiful inside and out, not to focus on your body image, size, or weight.
Thank you
But
very much for saying that. Hmm.
as a person,
Hmm.
I'm just so happy that you were able to put your story out there that really stemmed from your, I don't know, that biggest challenge in life. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely, hands down. Yes, but my journey with my eating disorder is um, the journey I'm most proud of, and the journey that was absolutely the hardest. And I think, as you said earlier, it's about saying, okay, it's about creating a healthy relationship, which means eating 3 to 6 times a day, and it's not about all or nothing. I'm really good at that, but it's finding that balance, right? So that balance was like whoa, and it just took me years and years and years, but I didn't stop. And like the one thing I'll tell people is that you need perseverance, but also you need a support team. Like I did not do this alone. I thought for years I could, and then like I wasn't getting better, and I'm like, I got this, and then it's like, wait a second, you need support around you. If that is a therapist, if that is a coach, if that's going to group therapy or going to see a psychiatrist or working with a nutritionist, it's so important to have the team around you and to lean on them. And one of the keys that I teach clients is that like reaching out to a person instead of your eating disorder is one way to reach recovery. So I have my clients reach out to me. If they're struggling and they have an urge, they reach out to me during the day because I'm like, if you can reach out to me instead of your eating disorder, that's amazing. That's you working on figuring out how to create a new behavior, like you're changing the dance. And that is something I work with my clients on.
That's wonderful. So change the dance by
Oh,
doing
yes.
something more intentional.
Mhm.
Meredith recommends that we give permission to ourselves to have that full recovery, to
Mhm.
stop the behaviors, have develop a purpose not related to your weight, size, or shape.
Mhm.
Um, you can create the narrative in your head of who you are. You don't have to focus on those outside views or inputs. I mean,
Sure.
there's you treat your body with love, compassion, care, and respect.
Mhm.
Live in the present moment. All foods fit.
Yes.
And if you can do all of this, you can get to that joyous place of freedom, where you
Yes.
can feel your feelings, identify, express, and validate that you deserve those feelings, and you don't have to wait for other people's input or approval. It's and it's wonderful. I feel that the trauma that I went through,
Mhm.
and I came out the on the other side,
Mhm.
yeah, it really helps me now to help others,
Mhm.
but also to live in that present moment day to day. And I see the people around me that don't, they're in that place of in the past or worrying
Yes.
about the future or, you know, so critical of themselves. And, you know, it could happen at any time or any age in your life. It's not just something when you're
Yes.
young. You know, it's important that you take time and you realize that you can really make a difference in your own life and in the lives of others. Um,
Yes.
I love having you here, Meredith. This has been so
Thank you so
inspirational,
much.
but also knowledge. I love all this. I didn't know that even what I had gone through
Mhm.
was
Sure.
because I was trying to protect myself.
Hmm.
It's so
Yes,
interesting.
it
It
is.
was
And
a
so I think that's a really important part of recovery because people, are like, oh, I have to, that was bad. No, no, no. Let's not evaluate. Let's be able to accept it and see what it did and then be able to say, okay, is it helping now? No, it's not. Okay, well, let's talk about that and maybe other ways you can get the same need met in a way that's going to be more healthy, more balanced, and more authentic. And I think that, it's a big part of the journey.
Yeah. And one of the things too that I think is important in recovery is to remember that you've got to heal the whole person. You know, like you said, you can't just change how you eat and expect everything else to fall in line.
Correct.
Um, there's different things to consider, like, you know, caring for a pet. If you can't have your own pet, you can do pet therapy. There's places where you can go
Absolutely.
volunteer your time.
Yes.
You can have music or singing as an outlet.
For
Um,
sure.
I I always be creative and use art if you need to. You can express
Absolutely.
yourself and you know, again, there's there's so many things, so many resources available. I have a blog and there was one I put out there recently. I've reinstituted this thing, so I hope to do that now again. But I did have like 101 ways to let go of stress. So
Mhm.
feel free and visit my website or
Love
my
to see
blog.
that.
There's
Absolutely. I actually write a lot about my book about creativity and how that was something I was recovering to. And I think that's another message that, we know what we're recovering from, but it's really important to have a picture of what you're recovering to. And for me, that
Mhm.
creative piece was just so stunted. And so for me, just putting on music, painting, me reading, me dancing, all these different things to bring that creativity back into my life was so powerful because I had just pushed it away and I didn't have that creative outlet. And so part of my recovery was a lot about that. And so that's why I love to journal and I love to write and I listen to music now and I paint. I mean, all these beautiful things that I kind of like put aside because the eating disorder took over. So I often talk to
Mm.
my clients about what are you recovering to, and asking them every time I see them. What are you recovering to right now? And they might say, oh, I'm recovering to going out to lunch with my daughter. I'm recovering to being able to, feel my feelings. I'm recovering to going on a vacation, whatever it may be, and I have them each do a vision board and for us to be able to continue to add to that because we want to know what we're recovering to. And for me, it just so happened I was recovering to be the best aunt I could be. And I am. And I'm
Mhm.
thrilled that I'm able to have these 4 beautiful relationships with my nephews, and to strengthen my relationship with them and to be able to put them first and just love them unconditionally. And sometimes that's really hard when you have an illness. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, you know, that's just, I want to hug you right now. I want to just
Oh,
hug
thank
you and
you.
say,
This hug.
it's
Yes.
okay.
I'm
It's
a hugger.
okay.
So.
Because, you know, because when I grew up, I was an only child. I had a half sister, but my mom gave her up or she was taken from us. I don't know. It's a interesting story, but she, I lost so much. And I think I didn't really want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to hurt. I didn't want to lose people. And so I've kind of built this safe world around myself, even now at going almost 50. This is my last week of, but, but I'm aware of this. And, I over the last few years, I've been putting myself out there to be more open to connecting with people, not just transactionally based, because I'm real good at that. Like I can, give me a job to do and I'll do it and it'll be a wonderful outcome. But this
Yes.
is just in terms of friendship or just connecting with people. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to be more mindful, to be in the moment with people, because we're human beings, not human doings. This is what
Oh gosh, I
the
love that.
message that I'm giving to myself, that we're so, I,
It's
so
just
yes,
intuitive. We talk about the doing mind and the being mind, and so much of us are in the doing mind. And what that is, it really is, it's a distraction. It's an obsession. Like I just going to focus on what I do and how much I can do at the end of the day, instead of saying, "Let me feel, let me be in this moment," without an agenda. And I think that's really hard in our society. So I think that's amazing. That I love that. We're human beings, not human doings. I love that.
yeah, feel free to use that. That's a
Thank you. I'll take it from you. Absolutely.
yeah. So when you're going through something, that's a good way to put it. It's a distraction from really who you can be. And
Yes.
that's one thing I hope the listeners can take away from this show, is that there is a better way of life that is attainable. It's
Yeah,
possible
it
to
is.
to live days filled with joy instead of distraction or drama
Yes.
or negativity or
Mhm.
all those things. I mean, so Meredith, is there anything else that you want to share with people? I know we've talked about your book, we've talked about um, your new book, Opening the Door: My Journey Through Anorexia to Full Recovery. It's available
Mhm.
on Amazon. Um, so your book, by Meredith O'Brien. Meredith, we also talked about your counseling. You run a center in Red Bank. How can people connect with you?
Sure. So it's my a business is called Meredith O'Brien and Affiliates, and they can go on to Meredith O'Brien with no apostrophe, lcsw.com, and that goes right to my practice website, has all the resources, as well as I do write a blog, and that is recovery from anorexia, all one word.com. And that has all of my blogs in writing, as well as I am a Carolyn Costin Institute certified eating disorder coach. And so I also offer coaching as well. And so that's under my recoveryfromanorexia.com. I do have an Instagram that I'm very proud of. So my Instagram is ed underscore recovery underscore mo.
Okay, that's ed underscore recovery underscore mo
Yes. So
on
that's another
Instagram.
way you can reach me. And I have on my book, I have everyone from my Facebook, my LinkedIn, my Pinterest, my email, because I love people getting in touch with me and reaching out.
Wonderful. So,
Yeah.
Meredith, now is there anything else you want to share
What I
before we
wanted to share
close?
is just one little short paragraph from my book, if that's okay.
Yes,
Just a little
wonderful.
paragraph. So I say this is in one of my later chapters, and it's called Baby Blue Eyes. And this is what I write. I said, full recovery is painting my black house shutters a bright color called baby blue eyes to add a burst of color to my life. Full recovery is keeping the Christmas lights wrapped around my banister all year. Being fully recovered is like waking up in a color TV set. The trees look greener, the flowers and leaves brighter, the sunset more glorious. The sky is Tiffany blue. My life was in black and white, and now it's in bright neon colors. This is a paragraph. Yeah,
Full recovery. That sounds amazing.
it is
Um,
amazing. It's absolutely. I'm living two separate lives. It seems like I'm reborn, and it's just to recognize that at any age, it is possible, and to not give up, and to lean on support and dig deep and find the what you're recovering to, and that motivation and hope and patience, and you can get there as well.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And that imagery is something that you can live and feel. That's one of the things I want to share with people. If you're so busy going through your lives, and dealing with things that are causing you to either not feel at all, or that you don't want to feel at all, it's something that you can attain to. Think about recovery, full recovery. Think about what you can recover to, and those goals, they can be yours.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can.
Thank you, Meredith. Well, we look forward to having you again on the show, and
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been absolutely a pleasure. Thank you so much, Alicia, and thank you for having me today, and I hope you have a beautiful sunny day.
Thank you. So everyone reach out to Meredith O'Brien. That's Meredith O'Brien, LCSW.com. As well, she offers coaching, recovery from anorexia.com. And on Instagram, we can find her on LinkedIn, Facebook. She's out there. So Meredith O'Brien, her new book, Opening the Door, My Journey Through Anorexia to Full Recovery. Go and look for that book, now available on Amazon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alicia. Take care.